Hello, for those of you who are joining me virtually this afternoon, welcome to Heriot-Watt Malaysia campus. I'm delighted to be able to talk to you about studying psychology and the careers that can then follow from that. I'm head of department here on the Malaysia campus, head of psychology, and my name is Professor Deborah Hall, and I'm Professor of Positive Psychology. I've been a psychologist in the UK and Malaysia over the past 30 years, and let me share my passion for the subject with you today. So the word psychology comes from Greek words. Psyche, meaning life, and logos, meaning explanation. So it's the study or the explanation of life, thoughts, feelings, emotions, behaviours. It's a very popular topic for students, becoming much more popular in the media, and it's become part of our everyday lives. Before I talk about the discipline itself, I'd like to just spend a few moments explaining a little bit about Heriot-Watt University and also thinking a little bit about what is unique about Heriot-Watt University Malaysia and the course in psychology that we offer. Heriot-Watt University is proud to be a Scottish university based in the capital city of Scotland, Edinburgh. We are celebrating our 200 years anniversary this year. We were founded in 1821. And maybe you didn't know that Heriot-Watt University was actually the world's first mechanics engineering institute. So it's got a very rich heritage that it's very proud of and an established reputation as an excellent teaching university and also a research-led university. It's been at the forefront of innovation and technological change, and we're pushing that forward for the next 200 years in being pioneering and innovative in education as well. As you can see from this picture, you're not here on campus today, but we've got a fantastic vista over the lake of Putrajaya. We came here in 2012 and we launched our first batch of programs in 2013. We opened our campus in September 2014 officially, and currently we have just over 2,000 students and just over 200 staff. But we do have capacity to grow and to take on more students. And it's been heartwarming to see that our psychology program over the years has been steadily growing as more students discover our program and word gets around about the quality of the psychology program that we teach. So that's a little bit about our beautiful campus. But we're not just based here in Malaysia. Heriot-Watt is a global university. And globally, we have 3 campuses. Campuses in Scotland, not just in Edinburgh, the capital city, but also campuses in various locations across Edinburgh, although psychology is focused on the Edinburgh campus. We've got a new campus in Dubai, and in fact our new facilities in Dubai have just opened, and we're looking forward to welcoming a new cohort of psychology students and returning psychology students back into those fantastic facilities on the new Dubai campus. And of course, the Asian hub here in Malaysia. So we're a global university. Well, what does that mean? One of the advantages of being a global university is this, our Go Global scheme. And because all of the 3 campuses teach the same psychology program. We offer the same curriculum. We teach that curriculum at the same time. And we teach it as a global teaching team. So that means as a student, it doesn't matter if you're based in Malaysia, in Dubai, or in Scotland, you have a very similar experience, although the lecturers that you'll interact with will be different depending on the local context. The Go Global scheme that we offer, when people can travel across international borders, gives you an option of continuing your studies in one of the other campuses. So you can choose to do a semester or a year in Dubai or Scotland or both. You have complete flexibility to choose how to configure your psychology program across all of the 3 campuses. We just ask for the Malaysia students that register here that you complete your first year with us here in Malaysia before you then decide to do any travelling. And it doesn't matter if you decide to come back to us or to complete your degree at one of our other campuses. That's the real beauty of this Go Global scheme. And what a better way, there's no better way of learning about how to be a global citizen, immersing yourself in another country's culture and environment, whilst being in that supportive, nurturing environment of a university. So I think we're quite unique in having this flexible Go Global scheme. Some other details of that scheme are shown on the slide here. So campus transfers are guaranteed. That's not the case in some of the other British universities based here in Malaysia. They offer transfers, but those transfers are not always guaranteed. We guarantee those transfers. If you stay here a year, when you transfer, you're eligible for a 20% fee waiver to study at those other campuses as an international student. And as I said, you can study for as little as 1 semester or more than that. That's completely up to you. And we're hoping or anticipating offering our Go Global scheme from our September intake, subject to international travel restrictions. Obviously, we've been in some form of lockdown since last March. So how have we responded to that, and how will we respond so that we're ready to cope with whatever the situation is? Because we're we have lots of uncertainty about what the future will hold. Well, Heriot-Watt has responded to that with what's called responsive blended learning. And as in many other higher education institutions, we've been combining some live streamed lectures with some recorded lectures, with some tutorials. And now that in Malaysia things are opening up, we will be able to supplement that from September with some face-to-face teaching, particularly small group teaching, where we can maintain any government SOPs and maintain safe distancing between our students. Our priority is always to keep our students safe, but we understand that the learning is enhanced if you have some face-to-face interaction. So we're ready to respond to whatever the situation by having some more face-to-face learning, but we also can readily take all of those experiences to the virtual environment. And that's what we've been doing for the past year or so during MCO and CMCO and RMCO here in Malaysia. One of the advantages from a global university perspective of moving to the online is that our Malaysian students can now benefit not just from being taught by Malaysian staff, but also by being taught by some of the other teaching team across our Dubai or our Scottish campus. If you remember, I said that it's the same curriculum offered at the same time. So that means that you can benefit as a student from having a lecture by a topic expert, even if that expert is based in the UK or in the United Arab Emirates. So it enables us to really deliver as a global teaching team. And although we're discussing what the future might hold, I think some of these benefits of enabling our students to access the experts in particular topics within psychology, whether they're in Malaysia, Dubai, or Edinburgh, we will continue that global teaching delivery, whatever happens, as the country relaxes and moves back into a more normal situation. So what we can certainly guarantee is that you, as a student with us, you will have minimal disruption to your learning journey. We've successfully delivered our teaching online for a year. We're ready to do that into the future. We've moved well-being support and other emotional and mental health support online, and it's a very dynamic situation. We're ready to change rapidly to whatever the change in circumstances. Now, I'm aware that a lot of other universities here in Malaysia offer psychology as well as other disciplines. So I'd like to just try and flag up to you as students and parents what you get at Heriot-Watt that you don't get with some of the other universities, our competitors. We are focused and we're very proud of delivering a holistic education. We focus on positive education, and what I mean by that is that we don't just teach you to be an expert in psychology. We help you develop as a young person, as an individual, and we take that responsibility extremely seriously. We strongly believe that a sense of purpose in life is really essential to achieving a positive impact on the world, and that's what we all hope to achieve. That's something that gives us life satisfaction. It's something that is very well known. As a positive psychologist, there's a lot of research evidence to show that achieving a positive impact helps maintain a sense of positive well-being, as well as giving you that satisfaction of giving back more. So we help students identify what their individual purpose is in life. What do they feel is motivating them? What are their life goals? What would they like to achieve? And we help you as a student mobilize that purpose into impact. And we do that not just through teaching you academic skills or teaching you professional skills as a psychologist, but we also have dedicated programs to help nurture your well-being, to help nurture your resilience, and to develop those skills that are needed to cope with any setbacks in life and to overcome any adversities. We also have programs and activities that enable you to do a little bit of self-reflection, to learn a little bit more about who you are, and to self-reflect on what your character strengths are. What are you really good at? These are some of the ingredients that help determine what kind of job you might want to do and what kind of job might give you some sense of satisfaction and build on those strengths that you have. We also do some self-reflection about what are your core values. What do you believe in? What do you hold to be true? Is it family? Is it relationships? Is it ethics? Is it a sense of curiosity, an intellectual journey? All of these things are important for making you as an individual unique. And they can help develop you as a person. Finally, I just talk about soft skills. There's a lot of talk in the media in Malaysia at the moment from employers. They talk about soft skills, they talk about transferable skills. It means the same thing. It's those things that employers are really looking for over and above the discipline-specific knowledge that you have. It's about being a good communicator. It's about being a good team player. It's about being an effective leader. It's about being punctual. It's about governance, understanding governance. It's all of those extra things that make our graduates extremely employable and extremely attractive to employers. And we purposefully develop all of those skills while you're here with us at Heriot-Watt. So how do we do that? Well, we have a number of different activities, and I'll just talk about the Empower program because this is one of the cornerstones of our positive education here at the university. It's a sort of guided series of programs starting at what level, which gives you a guided sort of journey of discovery to know and understand yourself so that you can lead yourself forward. The what level is compulsory for all of our first year students. And we take you through a program of these guided activities, self-discovery, and at the end, there are some group activities to undertake a community service project that enables you to put some of those skills into practice. So here are some of the pillars of the Empower program. We try and promote global citizenship and impact. We develop your resilience and emotional intelligence, your people skills, your innovative and entrepreneurial skills, decision-making and critical thinking, and things that will help your employability, CV writing, understanding about networking with industry, those people who might potentially be your future employers. And so the program enables you to gather points as you achieve in all of these different domains. And in future years, through the kilowatt, megawatt and gigawatt level, you have the option. It's not mandatory like the watt level, but you have the option, and we encourage you to pursue more, to stretch yourself, to move yourself out of your comfort zone, to challenge yourself, but in a supportive environment. And at the end of it, you'll have so much to say about your experience at Heriot-Watt as a graduate student. It's not just about going to lectures and learning about your subject. It's all of the extra things that you've done, all of the extra activities. We offer Duke of Edinburgh's award scheme. We encourage our students to do more community service, to support one another, to run support activities for one another, and to really help you develop all of these life skills. Here's just one example. So yesterday we had our Empower Award ceremony to celebrate all of those first years who've graduated from the What Level Empower program in their first year. And I have to say it's remarkable because they've had to do this all online through a virtual program. And one of our student groups chose to raise some funding for a charity on the east coast of Malaysia that works with gathering turtle eggs, hatching baby turtles and releasing them out in the wild. And they actually had a target of 2,000 ringgits, I think, and they exceeded that target by doing lots of publicity and having a website that raised some money. They did remarkably well. This is just one of many, many examples of all the fantastic work that our current first years are doing. So that was a little bit about Heriot-Watt as a general university, and those are some of the activities that all of our students can participate in. So what about psychology in particular? So, as I said, psychology is about the study of the human mind and behaviour, and it's a scientific subject. It's grounded in science. With a degree in psychology, you can become a professional psychologist. I'm a professional psychologist, I'm an academic, I'm a researcher, and I spent all my life working in psychology. But I realised that not all of our psychology students have a burning passion to be a psychologist for the rest of their life. And what I want to impress on you is that a degree in psychology opens up so many more doors than just being a psychologist as a career. You can do that, but you can be a scientist, you can be a researcher, you can be a therapist working in healthcare, or a clinician, or, as we'll see later in my talk, working in business. It's a very diverse discipline, and there are almost nearly boundless applications in everyday life. That was a quote taken from the American Psychological Association. Here in Malaysia, we don't yet have professional recognition for professional psychologists, but the ground is moving. And I'm sure that there will be one day. The Malaysia Psychological Association is lobbying very hard to professionalise the field and for the government to recognise psychology as a professional discipline. And as of 3 years ago, there were about 700 psychologists working in Malaysia, and that was excluding those clinical psychologists that are registered under the Allied Health Professions Act. So it's a large body of professional people, and every year as the universities across Malaysia graduate psychology students, that number is growing. So it's a very dynamic community that you would be joining. Now that's now. Where did psychology come from? So I don't know whether you know, but psychology as a discipline actually has really ancient roots. It was established as a field of study about 2,500 years ago. And to look for those roots in psychology, we have to go back to the ancient Greeks and the ancient Romans. Here's one of the founders of psychology. This is Aristotle, who you may have heard of. He was a Greek philosopher, and he thought about many different aspects of the discipline. He thought about learning, he thought about memory, he thought about perception, and I just wanted to illustrate one of his ideas. This is taken from his book called On the Soul. And he proposed a 3-part structure for the souls, and he talks about plants, animals, and humans having a soul. Plants, he said, just have a vegetative soul. They reproduce and they grow. And kind of that's about it. Animals have the same soul, but they have another soul, and he called that the sensitive soul. And that's about being able to move around in the world. You have intentional movement, intentional actions, and you can sense things. You can feel touch, you can feel heat, you can smell, you can see, you can hear. So animals have those senses as well. As humans, we have an additional sense. And he called this the rational soul. And this is about self-reflection, it's about thought, it's about concepts, it's about abstract thinking. And so at the time this was fairly radical stuff. Somebody is actually trying to think through what makes us uniquely human and to try and put it together in a theoretical framework. And this was Aristotle, who's credited for sort of formulating a lot of the basic foundations of psychology, even though those details of the theoretical models are still not kind of held to be true. We know a lot more since then. In those times, psychology wasn't a science. It was a philosophy. You see, Aristotle's described as a philosopher. And what that means is that he developed these theories just through rational thought. He thought these things through, but he didn't have any evidence. There's no evidence for these three souls. It's just a very clever person trying to rationalize and provide some explanations about life. Nowadays, we talk very much about psychology as a scientific discipline. So, what happened in that intervening period? Well, it's actually very difficult to measure thoughts and feelings and emotions. And that's why, as a discipline, it took, just over 2,000 years to really evolve into the discipline that we know today. William Wundt, he is recognized as the father of modern day psychology. And he was an experimental psychologist working in the last century. He came from Germany and he was based at the University of Leipzig. And he really turned psychology from a philosophy into a science by trying to start studying thoughts and emotions using experimental methodology. And in this picture on the right, you can see the first experimental laboratory for psychology. What these chaps are doing here, sat around the table, is this is really the first psychology experiment. And they were trying to assess the speed of thought by measuring how long it took an experimental subject to make a judgment. And what they're doing here is that they've got an old-fashioned clock with a pendulum. And Wundt managed to measure the difference in time between the actual movement of the pendulum and the movement of the pendulum as it was perceived by the participant. And he said that discrepancy in time between the actual and the perceived represents the speed of thought processes that the subject was going through. Now, this might seem quite mundane stuff to us nowadays, just looking at pendulums moving. But at the time, it was fairly radical. This was the first time that anybody had tried to measure thoughts, which are things that are inside your head, which are sort of intangible in many ways. And so this changed psychology forever. There are many, many different disciplines of psychology. Wundt was an experimental psychologist working in perception. And we certainly do cover some of those topics in our undergraduate course. But what I wanted to show you in this rather busy slide is that actually psychology is a very varied discipline. We have some core fundamental sort of topics. We have cognitive psychology. This is how people think. We have social psychology, which describes how groups of people think and influence one another and behave. We have developmental psychology, which is about how children develop from baby to kind of small toddlers through to teenagers and adults. We look at education. We look at forensic psychology and quite a lot of business and organizational psychology courses as well. And not forgetting mental health and clinical psychology. These are all of the fundamentals that are seen to be core to developing your basic grounding as a psychology graduate. And the curriculum meets the requirements of the British Psychological Society, which defines the minimum standards for psychology training. You'll probably see running through all of the years are some research methods and experimental work as well. And we teach our students how to become researchers, how to become scientists by devising research hypotheses, designing studies to collect data, collecting and analysing that data, and then interpreting it with respect to the original hypothesis. This is some of the sort of fundamental skill of being a scientist, and you're taught how to become a scientist as you take your journey with us. I'm happy to take any questions on the curriculum, but the simple take-home message from this slide is that we cover all of the fundamentals with some options to specialise, and those specialised courses are taught by some of our academic staff who have PhDs in some of those topics. At Heriot-Watt, we offer 2 undergraduate programmes for you to choose from. I just showed you the standard pure psychology. We also have psychology with management. So we're quite unusual in that as a psychology department, we sit within the School of Social Sciences next to the business school. So if you're interested in kind of how human behaviour influences organisations, how you can use your skills as a psychologist to help improve management processes, then maybe the BSc Psychology with Management is something that you'd be interested in. Broadly, it has the same core content as the pure psychology undergraduate degree, but it's more business oriented. And just to show you the differences, I've highlighted those different courses with the red asterisks. Year 1 is the same for everybody, and then in year 2 and 3 you will specialise with some business options. The advantage of being next to the Edinburgh Business School here on the Malaysia campus is that those courses starred in red are actually taught by experts in business. So some of our lecturers in the business school deliver those courses to our psychology students. So again, you're learning from the experts. And your research project is psychology, but it's more in a management sort of context. So that's our BSc Psychology with Management. Some of those elements, because we all meet the same standards, those British universities that teach psychology in Malaysia at least, just to flag up what's unique about our psychology programs at Heriot-Watt, we're actually, at the moment, we're still quite a small department. I think last year we had about 30 students in our first year intake, but we are growing, I'm pleased to say. Being small is good from a student perspective because at the moment, certainly we have quite a low student-staff ratio. What that means for you as a student is that you get a more personalised learning experience. You're not sitting in a lecture room full of students. Now in the UK, I've taught to lecture theatres of 400 students. Here, you would have a class size of between 10 and 30. The lecturers know you by name. It feels much more like a family rather than being in a great big organisation. And so we know you as a student. We get to know your strengths. We help you develop your weaknesses. I mentioned that one. That's about being taught by business school experts. Heriot-Watt has a strong reputation, generally speaking, for exploring and applying solutions to real-world issues. Remember, I said it was a mechanics institute and it's got a long track record of engineering. We take that philosophy forward into our psychology programs, and we're very focused on enabling you to think about how psychology is applied to real-world issues. And one of the ways we do that is at the end of year 2, you will have an opportunity to undertake an industrial placement, an internship for 3 months between June and August. At the end of year 2, before you come back for year 3, you'll go out into the workplace. And it gives you a real experience. We have students going to a wide range of different workplaces. I know one of our students is going to work with the Malaysia Psychology Association. One of my students is going to work with children at a sort of daycare centre. All kinds of different things. We also have people working in multinational corporations as well. That's a great opportunity for developing your soft skills. Remember, I talked about team working, interacting with others, communication, personal responsibility and leadership. Gives you that self-confidence as an individual once you leave us and go out into the big wide world. I mentioned our research projects. In the 3rd year, you'll deliver your own research project. That's worth 2 modules of credits, and you'll be supported in that project from one of our internationally recognised staff. And just to give you an example, our staff here in Malaysia have expertise in educational psychology, health psychology, cognitive psychology, as well as industrial and organisational psychology. So whatever you choose to do, there'll be somebody with the relevant skills to help you through your project. I talked about Go Global, but one thing to highlight is that although we've got 3 campuses, we are one global university. So your degree certificate says, this student got a psychology degree from Heriot-Watt University, full stop. You get a certificate from a British university. Doesn't say which campus you studied at, it's all the same. Okay. Mentioned transferable skills. I thought it might be helpful just to list down some of those skills that are central to being a psychologist. And we teach all of these things, particularly an emphasis on critical and analytical thinking. And I flag that up because employers, particularly in Malaysia, keep talking about how many of the graduates that they see don't come with critical thinking. And I think this is one of the hallmarks of a British education. It teaches you to not just take facts at face value, to analyse what you're being told, to make up your own opinion, and to then be able to argue to support your views. And with these transferable skills, the world is your oyster. So it's fine me just saying that we do all of this stuff and we teach you transferable skills, but how do we do it? Well, in the next 2 slides, I'd like to introduce you to some of the educational theory that underpins how we support this skills development. So this is a framework that characterises the British education system, and it was developed in the 1950s by an American educational psychologist called Benjamin Bloom. It's called Bloom's Taxonomy, and it provides a common vocabulary for thinking about learning goals in higher education. So we take students on a journey. When students come to us from high school or secondary school, the skills that they've often been using are kind of at the bottom of the pyramid. It's about being given facts to remember and to understand some of those facts. That's sort of what O&A levels primarily teach you. But a university education is different in that we develop those thinking skills into being able to take that knowledge and then apply it, use it in new situations. solve problems in a slightly different way by applying what you've learned. We talk about analysing. We talk about comparing and contrasting different theories or different perspectives, examining and experimenting. I mentioned evaluating. That's about developing your own opinion. Often in psychology, there's no right and wrong. It's not black and white. It's based on opinion, and you look at the body of evidence and you try and create arguments that support your opinion. That's what we mean by evaluating. And our courses enable you to develop those skills. And then at the top of the pyramid, we've got creating, which is about developing or formulating. This is kind of at the top of the pyramid, where you're taking knowledge and you're trying to create some new insight. Not all of our students reach that in their final year project. That's kind of often where a PhD sits, but we do at least aspire to being able to give you opportunities to have insights into and create some new knowledge for yourself and for others. So the take-home message is that our teaching methods inspired by the fundamentals of a British education do take you far beyond your school experience. And it might be a little bit challenging, a little bit uncomfortable at times, but remember, in those small class sizes with your supportive lecturers, you'll be guided and supported all the way through that journey. And this is just my second slide to show you how we do it. So we have a range of different teaching methods. We use lectures, we have seminars, we have tutorials. Often a lecture will be followed by a tutorial that gives you a chance to have more interactive discussion with your lecturer and classmates about a topic. We have some practical hands-on classes, and we have quite a lot of web-based and computer-based work. In fact, we can run and design experiments to be computer-based, so we can still do that even though the laboratories might be closed. It's our aim to make your learning experience fun as well as informative, so that you enjoy your time with us. Now, I'm sure as a parent you must be often thinking, with a degree in psychology, what can I do? Or what can my son or my daughter then do afterwards? And most parents that I speak to think automatically about a clinical psychologist or a counsellor. And certainly as a psychologist, you can work in a healthcare setting and you can work with people who have mental health difficulties, anxiety, depression, or even more severe difficulties like schizophrenia and such like personality disorder, obsessive compulsive disorder. That's the sort of bread and butter of a clinical psychologist. To do that, you would need further professional training at postgraduate level. And certainly a lot of psychologists do move into that area, but there are other areas of psychology as well. And these are just some of the psychology-related careers. I'm not going to go through every career one by one, but if you've got any questions about a particular career, you want to know a bit more about it, does it exist in Malaysia, how do you get there, then I'm happy to take any questions so that I can tailor my response. All of the careers on this slide are professional psychology careers, and they all need some sort of professional postgraduate education beyond an undergraduate degree. But certainly an undergraduate degree in psychology then opens the doors to all of these different career options.
Can I know more on the forensic psychology?
Forensic psychology. Okay, so I had a question for those of you who are virtual, I had a question from the floor just to explain forensic psychology. So I'm just going to go to my notes because I want to make sure that I give you the right description, because I always get muddled up a little bit between forensic and criminal psychology. Let me just, here we go. So a forensic psychologist will assist law enforcement professionals, the police force, in investigating and solving crimes. Criminal psychologists and forensic psychologists both work with the police force, but there's a difference between those two. So you asked about a forensic psychologist. They will specialize in the aftermath of a crime. So a crime happens, and then they bring in the forensic psychologist, and they will try and evaluate a suspect's mental state. Or do they have any psychological disorders that might have led them to commit that crime? Can you do a personality evaluation on this suspect? Or they might counsel the victims and their families. So they're primarily working with the police to help resolve a crime after it's happened. A criminal psychologist will focus primarily on trying to determine a motive or create a profile of a perpetrator. So they'll think about maybe what motivated somebody or might motivate somebody to commit a crime. So they'll kind of be working more maybe before a crime has been committed or with serial offenders. So I hope that explains. Certainly a forensic psychologist needs further training. You wouldn't be able to become a forensic psychologist straight after an undergraduate degree. You'd need some further postgraduate training. I'm aware and I appreciate that not everybody listening to today's talk has a burning passion about being a professional psychologist. And that's fine, actually, because as we saw at the start, then there are many, many psychologists in Malaysia, and they're not all professional psychologists. They're psychologists working in many different areas. So, many of you may not want to go on to postgraduate training at master's or PhD level, and that's fine. It's not everybody's cup of tea. So I've just given you a flavour of some of the other sort of career pathways, because psychology graduates are uniquely poised to enter a wide variety of professions because they've got such really useful and flexible skills. So here are some of the main examples. I've grouped them into three. So the first sort of cluster is human resources. A careers advisor, a recruitment consultant, or a human resources executive. It's about kind of recruiting and hiring people and matching people with the right sort of skills for the right sort of jobs. Then in the second sort of batch, we've got more business focused, advertising and public relations and sales. And there are many, many different jobs in that area. These are just 4 examples. And then the final category are other kinds of helping careers that are not necessarily psychologists, but they draw on some of those psychological skills. A social work assistant, working in the community, or in an educational setting, working with children who have learning difficulties or other physical or emotional difficulties, and helping them to learn and develop and grow beyond the classroom. It's important, I think, just to get a sense of what some of our students say. And this is just a short testimonial by one of our recent graduates who was in the class of 2018. And so you can read what she has to say about studying psychology with us. We have quite a vibrant community amongst our psychology students. We launched the Psychology Society in 2016, and all of our students registered in psychology are members of the Psychological Society. They create a very welcoming community. They organise social events, they organise educational events, and they support other students to enhance student learning. Here are just some of the pictures of activities that they've done, and even the last year while we've been in lockdown, our students enabled us to run our Global Happiness Forum last month in March, and that was attended by more than 300 people across the world celebrating International Day of Happiness. If you've got burning passion to develop some of your leadership skills, then you've got a chance to volunteer for the committee. We've got roles like president, vice president, secretary, etc. So again, you get a chance to take on some of those roles and develop some really useful transferable skills. And so I've given you a quick whistle-stop tour through Heriot-Watt, through our psychology programs, and now I'm happy to take any questions. But if not, thank you very much for your time, and we look forward to welcoming you to Heriot-Watt University, Malaysia. Thank you. So Okay, so somebody on the chat who's been watching is asking, I didn't do very well in biology. Do I need to be good at this subject to study psychology? So the simple answer is it can help for some of the subjects, but it's not essential. So as I explained, psychology is a very diverse subject. I like biology. And so when I did psychology, I chose some of those options that played to my strengths. Things like neuropsychology. In fact, my PhD was on neuropsychology, kind of studying the brain and how the brain kind of supports all of those complex cognitive activities. But there are many, many more branches of psychology that don't rely on biological knowledge. And it's certainly true that any of the courses that we offer on things like consciousness or neuropsychology, even if you've never done biology before, we give you enough of the basics about neural processing, about the central nervous system, about sensory coding that you can pick up. You can pick it up. So you don't need to be good at that subject, study psychology. Are there any other questions? One more. What can I do with a psychology degree in the business line? So with our psychology in management, there are lots of different kinds of organisational psychology roles. Some of the ones that I didn't talk about but were on my slide from the psychology related careers are things like a consumer psychologist. So understanding trends in consumer behaviour, trying to predict the markets. You know, certainly over the last year we've seen a move from buying things in the high street to buying things online. People's purchasing behaviours have changed. Consumer psychologists work with organisations to look at those kind of questions. We have industrial and organisational psychologists, and they work with organisations to help improve the effectiveness and the efficiency of the organisation as a whole. So they might analyse processes. They might do things like lean management, looking at matching tasks with skill sets of the workforce, looking at complex process chains where things need to be passed from one person to another. And I've certainly, in my experience as a psychologist, given quite a lot of continuing professional development training to organisations. Like a couple of weeks ago, it was the JPA here in Putrajaya, talking to them about project management, about setting smart objectives, about staff development and staff management. And so those are all sort of careers that are very well tailored to the skills of a psychologist, but addressing business-related issues. So I think that's all the questions from the chat. Are there any other questions from the room? No? Okay. Thank you very much for your attention.